Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, you're all well. I'm joined today by Brother Sulaiman Ahmed to address the concerning racist and Islamophobic civil unrest we see in the UK and the many factors contributing to it. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Hope you're well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Alaikum assalam. Thanks for having me. Yeah, looking forward to this discussion. I think it's extremely important.
Yes, definitely. But before we get on to sort of the main topics, it would be good to get an introduction. So, as well as being a political commentator, you're also qualified in law, mathematics, and Islamic philosophy. And I believe you're now an author, and we're going to speak about your up and coming book on Israel on October 7th later on, inshallah. But firstly, please, can you briefly introduce yourself to the audience in terms of your activism work and your upbringing as a British Pakistani Muslim in the UK?
Yeah, sure. I'm not a qualified lawyer, just to be clear, but let me give you a bit of a background. So,
Yes.
obviously, I was brought up in Middlesbrough, which is the northeast of the UK, in a socially deprived area, working class area. And then when I was 11, I went to religious boarding school. So I spent 5 years in an Islamic boarding school, studied secular and Islamic education. Then I left and I did my A levels. My initial degree was in law. Then I did mathematics, became a mathematics teacher. Later, I did an MA in philosophy and theology. And I was doing my PhD in philosophy and theology when I became quite big on X, and so therefore I paused that and concentrated on that. In terms of activism, I've always taken my time to ensure that I'm helping the Muslim community, whether it's in granular level or in a large scale level. So I ran an Islamic school for a while as well to make sure, to give people an education. Again, that was a socially deprived area. And just to make sure that you give people, who don't have opportunities to succeed in education. And my thought was always that, look, I need to, try and get some younger students and educate them and make them aware of the geopolitical situation, the situation Muslims face, and to relay the ideas in a more of a political manner. And so I never expected to become like big on X. And then like January 2023 hit, I started posting on social media. I became really big. And then October the 7th happened, as you mentioned. And after that, I just blew up and became huge. So I'm quite blessed in the sense of I'm big on X. My page gets a huge number of views. And then I run the biggest X spaces on X, which is like geopolitical spaces. And I had some of the biggest, most famous guests on there. In terms of impact as well, obviously, Elon Musk does know who I am, and he's got significant issues with me, hence why he took away my blue check mark. And the reason he did it was, it's one of two things, or it could be an amalgamation of both, which is I was speaking out against the H-1B visas in the United States of America, which is essentially mass immigration of Indians based on work visas. Now, This is something that Elon Musk supports. So he's supporting the mass immigration into the United States of America, but then is attacking Muslims in the UK, allegedly based on immigration. We're going to speak about the fallacy of even that argument. But that being said, he got upset with that because I was one of the more vocal people speaking about it. And it was the day before he was going to support Tommy Robinson in a significant manner. And obviously, I am, like without boasting, I am the biggest Muslim political commentator coming from the UK, especially with my large United States audience. And so I think those were the multiple factors where he just took away my blue check mark, monetization, and that impacts visibility a little bit. Well, a lot. And it was only because of like the huge support I have that I was able to still have a decent amount of views on my page. So that's kind of like a background of what I am. I'm a geopolitical guy. I focus on politics. When I was younger, I did get into like Islamic issues quite a bit, and maybe I realized as I've grown up and as I've gotten older, and even during these last couple of years, that actually these kind of minor disagreements within Islam or these minor issues are probably less important, and I thought the bigger focus is on geopolitics, Zionism, and the protection of people who are oppressed, which I believe is happening in the UK in terms of the Muslim community.
Yeah, I appreciate your support, especially the support you show our community and how vocal you've been about Palestine online and issues relating to that. As a fourth generation British Pakistani myself with family across the UK, I see us as being very much part of Britain. So our communities are very prominent in Northern England, London, even in Scotland and Wales. And I've heard stories from my elders about, the racism they faced back in the UK back in the 70s and the 80s. But to see history repeat itself in 2025 is just astounding. And it really started to amplify after the tragic incident in Southport, which had nothing to do with Muslims. And with so many anti-Islam influencers stirring up more hatred, it's just got worse and worse over the last couple of years. What is your opinion of the current racist and Islamophobic far-right civil unrest we see unfolding in the UK today?
Well, I think you made an important point, and I'm going to speak about the Southport riots in a second. But just before I do, you're 100% right. So what you've got is a scenario where, and actually, let me talk about the Southport riots, and then I'll talk about this. So, look, what happened with the Southport riots? It was complete misinformation. It was complete fake news. None of it was true. Tommy Robinson and his far right completely lied about what happened in Southport. Southport attack, which were horrific, horrendous. We all condemn those attacks. But those attacks were done by a Christian boy from Rwanda, and he was second generation. They claimed it was a Muslim guy who was an illegal immigrant who just come off the boat, which is completely untrue. And it shows the lies that they have to manufacture in order to cause dissent. But such was the lies that Tommy Robinson came out. He was like, he was screaming. He was telling people to riot. He was telling people to stand up. He was essentially inciting violence. And as much as he claims that he's attacked by those in power, he's attacked and demonized by the judiciary, by the police, by the government, that was a prime example of him causing civil unrest in the United States of America, in the United Kingdom, and there'd be no issue whatsoever in terms of any kind of litigation. That shows that the litigation against him is always orchestrated. Now, in terms of what they said, they lied. They lied that it was a Muslim, and they lied that it was it was an illegal immigrant. He was a Christian, and actually Tommy Robinson supports. He said it in various interviews, and even in his last interview, he said he supports immigration into the UK if it's from Christians. So this is a type of immigration that Tommy Robinson supports. So it's an immigrant from a Christian from Rwanda who stabbed these innocent girls. He lied and said it was Muslims. They lied and said it was Muslims. He incited the violence. When I said they, I mean the far right. And then what happened was you had people from his extreme far right movement go out onto the streets and riot. And they'd done this previously in Leeds. In Leeds, there was a riots again between them and the Romanian community. There were riots, and these guys were supporting them and instigating them. And then they've basically pushed these riots again in Southport. And so what they did was they went to mosques and started to attack them. So again, nothing to do with Muslims, but they attacked the mosques. Now, when they attacked the mosques, this is when a lot of Muslims came out to try and defend their community. And the Muslims who came out were largely Pakistani, because the vast majority of the Muslim population in the United Kingdom is Pakistani, at about 35 to 40% of the makeup of the Muslim population. And so they were defending themselves. And you saw riots break out throughout the United Kingdom. And it's ironic that people in the far right in the United States of America talk about the negativity or the negative impact that the BLM riots had in the United States of America, where shops were destroyed. Well, these riots were exactly the same. And it shows their hypocrisy. The riots, they attacked working class areas. They attacked and burnt police stations. They broke up working class shops. They destroyed working class areas. One example is in Sunderland. They destroyed a place that helped recruitment for working class people to get jobs. So if you think about what he did, was they did riots, but they attacked local working class areas. They destroyed buildings. So they claim that they're for the working class. How are they for the working class when they're destroying working class areas? They incited these riots, and it was all based on fake news. And actually all of this, and what happened was, yes, of course, the Pakistanis came out, Muslims came out to defend themselves, and there was an altercation and interaction. Now, it lends to your argument what you made earlier, which was about because you're fourth generation, I'm third generation. My parents also came in the 60s, my grandparents, sorry. And so what you've got is an important point, which is, this is true. When they came, they always considered themselves visitors. And so they thought, look, we're going to come here, we're going to go back. And they end up staying. But yes, they had racism, racist attacks against them, and they just took it. And for example, they'd attack people on the streets, or they'd break windows, and people would just patch up the windows, and they wouldn't retaliate because they saw themselves as coming as visitors, and they're going to leave, and we're going to have to just take the abuse and oppression. What's happened is, with the Muslim community, the Pakistani community, because they're second generation, third generation, fourth generation, they've assimilated. And so it's the greatest irony that they're saying they don't assimilate. Actually, this is a product of assimilation, because these young lads have assimilated. They've become exactly like the white working class. And so just like the white working class are going out and rioting, the Muslim working class are going out and responding to those and then coming out in an aggressive manner as well to defend. And so you have two parties, working class parties, whether they're white or Muslim, acting in the exact same manner. It's a demonstration of assimilation because, as you said, in the past they would take it. And now they're like, you know what, we're British. We are as British as you are, and we're going to act in the same manner you are. And so they're acting in the same way. They're acting like working class people. So the reality is this is a product of assimilation rather than segregation. So this is completely goes against their point because they're making no sense in terms of that argument. But yeah, that's what happened in the Southport riots. And Tommy Robinson is someone who has been instigated and manipulated into doing this. And what I mean by that, not that he's manipulated, he doesn't know what he's doing, but Tommy Robinson as a person, as a persona, was dead. He had no interaction. He had no engagement. He admits this. He says, look, I gave up. Things weren't going well. I realized that things are not going to happen. I had a bigger following than him on X. I had a bigger impact, a bigger engagement than him on X. He'd come back and he was having zero engagement. It's only when Elon Musk start promoting him, start perpetuating him, and start instigating the people in the UK for him that he started getting promotion. And so he is merely an archaic person who had no value whatsoever and was recreated by Elon Musk. And we can speak about later about the reasoning for why Elon Musk did that, because it's multifaceted and it's something that people need to be aware of. It's not very basic in terms of just a basic hatred of Muslims. It's a lot more wide ranging, because what happened is with Elon Musk, first of all, obviously he's controlled by the Zionist lobby. He did his talk to the Auschwitz. He did a space with Ben Shapiro and rabbis in order to placate them. But it's more complex than that. So Elon Musk, actually, do you want to talk about it now, or do you want to talk about it later in terms of like this?
We're going to come on to Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson later on as well, because we've got additional questions about that. You're right, and most Muslims who get in trouble in the UK are more British than Muslim in cultures and values. Like we've always said, you know, British culture sort of takes over Islam. So does Pakistani culture sometimes inside the homes. There were Muslims that did come out and try and calm things down, but when you get attacked, and what are you supposed to do? What's alarming to me is, you know, how this anti-Muslim propaganda has spread so rapidly amongst not only working class people who used to be, you know, the main targets for this type of marketing, but now we have people from all walks of life that are buying into it. We saw all the hype around reform and burqa bans, as well as visibly Muslim families with kids being filmed and harassed in the streets, like you said. And I believe the Israeli marketing machine is behind it, you know, which again we'll speak about later as well. And it's no coincidence that we've got pro-Israel media channels like GB News and Talk TV that are constantly pumping out anti-Islam, anti-Muslim slop, which is basically what their toxic brands are built upon. And then we have the sellout token, Irani, Pakistani, fake Muslim, black and brown influencers who pander to the far right. And that just makes me sick that they would do that. One of the major talking points in the UK, which you touched upon, is immigration, in particular, illegal immigration and Muslim immigration. We see drunken louts outside hotels causing, you know, a scene, harassing people, and at times even resorting to violence when they should be addressing the British government instead. What are your thoughts on the uproar around illegal immigration and Muslim immigration to the UK and the West in general?
So let's talk about both things, because both things are a fallacy. So when they talk about illegal immigration, they're hoping that people are unaware about the realities of the United Kingdom. And they're basically copying the talking points of the United States of America. Now, the United States of America have an issue with illegal immigration. There's no doubt about that. They have almost like 11 million people who came in over the last 4 years. They've got a significant number of illegal immigrants in the United States. And what they're doing is they're basically copying that and making it look like that we have the same issue there. And because people from the United States, and that is largely it, are thinking, you know what, we have an issue with illegal immigration. Illegal immigration is bad. Therefore, if they must have a problem with illegal immigration, it must be bad. And so therefore, they're copying the talking points. In reality, look, I don't agree with illegal immigration. Everything should be done illegally. That being said, it's not as big an issue as they're claiming. How many illegal immigrants come into the UK every year? You're looking about 20 to 30,000, 35,000. Where is 35,000 to 11 million? It's not comparable. So the numbers are extremely minute, but they make this into a talking point because it becomes a very easy conversation, because I think any person's like, wait a sec, we don't want illegal immigrants into the country. Why are people then financially supporting illegal immigrants rather than the populace in the UK who is struggling significantly? And we could talk later about why people in the UK are actually struggling. But so they realize that, and so therefore they use that. But this is a very small number of people. And so when you look at the far right attacking them, it is really based on ignorance. In reality as well, when you look at the illegal immigration in terms of the people in the hotels, a very small minority of them have committed crimes, and a very extreme minority of them have committed sexual crimes. I think no one disagrees that those who have committed sexual crimes, should be tried and then should be deported, right? I think nobody disagrees with that. Yeah. But you're looking at 0.1% or 0.01% of people who've done that. And so what about the remaining 99.9% of illegal immigrants? Obviously, they shouldn't be in the country because they've come in illegally. We believe in law. We believe in legislation. This is something that is a part of our religion as well, this legal aspect that you follow the laws, and the legal aspect you don't break your contracts. So when you look at these illegal immigrants, of course, they shouldn't be in the country. But now look at the actions. So these actions of these far-right thugs is to go out to these hotels and physically attack, physically assault people. They were talking about burning the hotels down. Like, what kind of lack of humanity do you have to say that, look, this person who's come to this country as an illegal immigrant, I disagree with it politically. My response is to harm and hurt them and to murder them. This shows the psychology of these people, and it's a lack of ethics, a lack of morality. Because if you speak to any good Muslim, any good Christian, or any good Jewish person, if their ideals are not based on extremism, they will reject this idea that you can physically harm an innocent individual. Never mind someone who's not innocent, because we believe in law. Even in the United Kingdom, the legalistic framework of the United Kingdom is based on the Magna Carta, which is based on Christian values, is based on this idea that everyone is allowed a trial. Everyone has a right to defend himself with witnesses and evidence. So this goes against the very ideas of being British. The irony is, it literally is an antithesis of British values, which they claim that they uphold. The second thing is, one of the biggest lies that has been told on social media is this fallacy about Muslim immigration. This is a complete lie. There is no Muslim immigration happening into the United Kingdom, and nor is there a Muslim takeover happening in the United Kingdom. This has been fabricated to demonize Muslims, to make it look like they're taking over, that they want to implement Sharia law into the United Kingdom. It's a complete lie. Let's look at the data. The data shows that in 2011 to 2021, which is when we had the census in the United Kingdom, we have it every 10 years, the Muslim population in the United Kingdom only increased by about 1%. During that time, the Christian population dropped by 30%. So the Christian population drops by 30%. The Muslim population only increases by 1%. So what's happened to the remaining 29%? They became atheists. They didn't become, it isn't that Muslims took over, they just lost their religion. What's the reason they lost their religion? Actually, it is because of people in the far right, like Tommy Robinson, like Paul Golding, who they attacked Islam based on religious values, which are found in Christianity, and actually found more stricter in Christianity. And based on that, what they did was they made people lose their religion. And if you look at a lot of the leaders in the far right, they're either atheists or gay or whatever it is, but they're not actually Christian. And so they attacked Muslims and lost Christianity based on those values. So even now in his recent interview, he said, I believe in liberal ideas such as LGBTQ and feminism. Well, those things are antithesis of Islam, but they also are not found in Christianity. Actually, if you look at Christianity, they have stricter punishment on those compared to Islam. It's not permissible in Islam, of course, but it's much more stricter in Christianity and Judaism. So he is the reason why it died. Now, I've demonstrated that, first of all, Islam isn't taking over from a numerical perspective. The second thing is, what about immigrants? Actually, let's look at the data over the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, when you look at immigration into the United Kingdom, it's not Muslims. Again, another lie. The vast majority of immigration that's come into the United Kingdom is from India, an immigration that Tommy Robinson supports. 1 million Indians have come into the United Kingdom over the last 5 years. Wow. The second country after that is not a Muslim country, it's China with 350,000. The country after that isn't a Muslim country, it's Nigeria with 330,000. So 1,350,000, 330,000 coming into the United Kingdom, none of them are Muslim. The last point I just want to make on this is that another fallacy that the far right make is people like Laura Loom and Tommy Robinson is saying, oh, Muhammad is the most common name in the United Kingdom. That means they're taken over. This, again, argument is good and is used well by people who are ignorant. But anyone who understands basic data thinks, wait, what's the reason for it? But what does the data show? So the reason that Muslims have a common name as Muhammad is because what it is within Islamic, within Muslim culture, or there is this idea of, naming your child Muhammad. So whatever name you give your child, whether it's Ridwan or whatever, they'll put the name Muhammad before it. They'll think of the main name as being Ridwan, but just out of respect of the Prophet, peace be upon him, they'll put the word Muhammad before it. So what it shows is that Muslims use that name in a common manner, but not that there's the majority of Muslims the majority of births are Muslim. In reality, what does the data show again? The majority of foreign births in the United Kingdom, they're not Muslim. They are Indian. So the births show up until 2 years ago, the vast majority of births from females was Indian and from males was Romanian. And now the data shows even that's been taken over. Both their births, foreign births in the United Kingdom from males and females is Indian. So what that shows is there is mass immigration happening to the UK, but it's not happening from Muslims. It's happening from Indians. The biggest birth rate is Indian. The biggest immigration is Indian. None of those are Muslims. So I just want to debunk that because it's a complete lie and fallacy.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And I think the problem is a lot of people don't look at data. They look at propaganda and they look at media, right? And that's where they get their information from. And I agree with you. Muslim immigration is happening in very, very small numbers. And there is more Indian immigration than Muslim. But when we talk about Muslim immigration, obviously I'm a product of immigration. You're a product of immigration. My great-grandparents came to the UK after the Second World War. They helped build this country. And then you have Americans, Canadians, Australians, South Africans, Israelis, etc. They're all European immigrants. So it's ironic and quite hypocritical when people are having meltdowns about immigration whilst ignoring their own history. I personally think Muslim immigration to the West is justified due to all the countries that have been invaded and destabilized in the Middle East by the West. So when we see Muslim immigration, that's why we see it. If you don't want people turning up at your border looking for a better life, then maybe don't invade and destroy their countries and create millions of refugees. Western colonization has also played a big part in causing economic problems in Muslim countries. I hear, people again make excuses that it was their government or ancestors that did it, but these refugees are still feeling the after effects to this very day. Why does history end with your ancestors? And, before, like I said, it's a bit rich for Europe to colonize the world and steal all the resources and then cry when people want to come here for what's rightfully theirs. And before the bigots, say we're playing the victim or that every country took part in colonization, every other type of colonization has ended. But Western colonization continues through what Europeans are doing in Israel as we speak. Yeah, and then obviously through neo-colonialism, which is the control of former Western colonies through economic means by trapping them in unjust debt systems that continue to benefit former colonial powers and global financial institutions. So it's a very interesting point to discuss, and it's very important that people actually look into the research and do the research to find out about data and about the background of it.
Just on that, I do slightly, obviously, my opinion is slightly different. I do agree with you in terms of what's happened in the past. And obviously, I vehemently agree with you in terms of what's happening right now. So this isn't even a historic thing. This is that the vast majority of Middle Eastern countries are being bombed and destroyed for the state of Israel. And what's happening is that is causing a crisis where people are not safe in their own country, and then they're migrating away from their own country. And evidence of that is that when they're not bombing countries, them countries are able to flourish. Saudi Arabia, the GCC countries, UAE, Qatar, all are doing well because they're not being bombed for Israel. So and those people are not leaving. Those people are not trying to basically migrate into the UK. So of course, when you destroy someone's country, they then look for migration. They look for safety somewhere else. And the UK is a safe country. So I understand the logic behind why it happens. And of course, that is something that there is a responsibility for. You shouldn't be supporting foreign wars for a foreign state while your own country is being destroyed. And if you really care about your own country, you wouldn't be supporting so much money being spent on foreign wars for a foreign nation of Israel and sacrificing your soldiers and your people for Israel. And that's the reason people are suffering in the UK. So you're right in that regard. But in terms of immigration itself, I do think that there needs to be it needs to be minimized significantly. I think there's too much mass immigration, which is harming the local populace. Like, I'm from a working class area, and I do believe in helping out the working class, because mass immigration only helps the rich. It's why Elon Musk supports it. His only attack on Muslims is for other reasons we're going to speak on later. But mass immigration only helps the rich, because what they want is cheap labor. Actually, in reality, the working class suffer the most. When you bring in immigration, let's say, for example, a working class Brit, he's going to get paid £10 an hour. Now what happens is, when you bring in like 1,000 Indians, you can now only pay him £1 an hour. And so he suffers. And so I do think that there is a major issue with immigration. I think that you need to look out for your people. Once your country's strong enough, of course, you can bring other people in to help them out. That's a separate situation. But right now, I think there is a major issue with immigration, and you need to support the working class. Now, no, let me be clear on this. The only reason the working class are suffering is because those in power, you can either call them the corporations, I call it the Zionists, whatever it may be, who control our society. If you look at all the major things that happened, financially harmed us significantly, whether it's lockdowns and COVID, which again, who were the financial beneficiaries? It was the pharmaceutical companies, it was BlackRock, and all of them are run by Zionists.
Yeah.
The other thing was, you had the Ukraine-Russia war, again, military-industrial complex, which is all Zionists. You also had Brexit, which was pushed by Rupert Murdoch, which was pushed by Nigel Farage, which were all Zionists. Now you look at the genocide that's happening in Gaza, pushed by the very same people. We are spending huge amount of money. This isn't just financial. This isn't just like, for example, they're buying things off us. When we're sending warplanes to help support them against Iran, this is fine. Our military budget is being used. So all of these things are causing a huge poverty in the United Kingdom, and it's all being used for, and it's all being done for the foreign nation of Israel and for Zionism. This is the reason people are poor. And then this being controlled by people like Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson, who is being financially paid by them, and that's something we need to come on to, by the Zionists, because he tries to lie about that in interviews. And that's why they're harming the working class. So actually, we are the people who support the working class in Britain. We feel for them. We want their situation to be better, but they're being sold out by Tommy Robinson and various others for the foreign nation of Israel, and for people like Keir Starmer, who is a Jewish Zionist. His children are Jewish. His wife's a Jewish Zionist. He's got family in Israel. These people are selling out the working class people and are sold out, and it's not actually the Muslims.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's good about this is that people are finally waking up with everything that's happened in Gaza with Israel. People are finally waking up to this. You brought up Elon Musk quite a few times, and one thing that he brought up on X was the UK grooming scandal and brought it back into the spotlight. What was your take on the hype around the rehash, grooming gang scandal and everything that he sort of said on it?
Well, I smile because this is another example of lies and propaganda, and it's lies and propaganda based on two aspects. And this is the reason why they'll never have someone like me on, because they know I can just destroy their lies on the other content we talked about and this. So let's talk about this. First of all, the grooming gang scandal is something that was an issue that happened in the past, right? The data shows it was like, for example, in terms of when you look at the scandals, it was up until 2013, 2016. So the entire thing was archaic. They brought it back to demonize Muslims because the world started standing out against Israel. And they wanted to demonize Muslims and cause civil unrest in the UK. And again, we'll talk about in the future why they're trying to do that. But in terms of the grooming gangs themselves, the first thing is, let's be clear on this. We stand against any form of sexual violence, sexual assault, grooming, pedophilia, whatever it is, against anyone. Right? Yes. Irrespective of who it is, it's an evil act. And actually, according to Islam, it has the most severe punishments, right? Even more so than Western society. That being said, the question becomes, so are there Muslims who are partaking in this, or Pakistanis? Yes, they are. And we condemn them, and we find them as being grotesque, and they need to be punished to the full extent of the law. But are they disproportionate? Because that's the most important thing. Because what they're trying to relay is that per capita, or they are disproportionate, and it's these people doing it. That's the lie. They are not disproportionate. If you look at the data based on grooming gangs or even sexual violence, right? All of it's been done in a proportionate manner. So white people do it proportionally based on their population, Muslims do it based on, Pakistanis do it based on their population, and various other groups do it based on their population. It's not specifically a Muslim issue. It's a holistic issue where these things are happening. If you look at the inquiries Another lie they made is that, guess what? No one talked about this. There's been about 8 or 9 detailed inquiries. You've got the Telford inquiry, you've got 3 Rotherham inquiries, you've got the Derby inquiry. So many inquiries have been done about this, and we welcome more as long as they're not biased, because we know Rupert Law is doing one, but we know this is gonna be biased and propaganda based. But those inquiries clearly stated that yes, there were failures, and I agree with that. There were failures on multiple levels, but those failures weren't based on religion or race. So it wasn't to protect Muslims. They just failed in their jobs that they were meant to do to protect these vulnerable people, which they should be doing. And so what I've demonstrated, that none of this is disproportionate. The data shows it, that when you look at the percentage of Pakistanis, which is 2%, when you look at the percentage of Muslims, which is 6%, they are not committing these crimes based on that. This figure of 84%, which is what Tommy Robinson continues to tout, is a lie, and it's based on, you know who the source of that is? Tommy Robinson.
Oh.
So Tommy Robinson creates the figure, and then he tells us this is the data. So what happened was, Tommy Robinson was part of the EDL, and he would do these. And Tommy Robinson is a football hooligan, so they used to do a lot of these riots. They would attack people. They would attack their own people because he's a hooligan. And Tommy Robinson is available to the highest bidder. Whoever pays Tommy Robinson will sell out to them.
Yep.
And I'll demonstrate who he sold out to later. But at that time, he sold out to someone called Majid Nawaz of Quilliam Foundation, a Muslim Zionist, who is a traitor to Muslims, but traitor to society. He did an apology recently, a few years ago. But again, once again, everyone shunned him because of the harm he did to the Muslim community through the Quilliam Foundation. Because what the Quilliam Foundation did was, when I talk about this 84% in a second, they also put in something called Prevent into UK schools. And that was to demonize Muslims, anyone who demonstrated that they were overtly Muslim. And what that means is having conservative values, they had the risk of losing their children. And that was another way he basically took away religion from this country. But once again, it harmed the Christian community, not the Muslim community, because they, again, wanted to demonstrate they don't have religious values, because they thought those values were extreme because they were propagated like that by people like Tommy Robinson, and they lost their religion. And so Prevent was something that was propagated by the Quilliam Foundation. That was a lobby group, and then they put that into UK schools to demonize Muslims. Coming back onto Quilliam Foundation is they bought Tommy Robinson out. So they bought Tommy Robinson out, they gave him a job. He then condemned the EDL at that point because that was his job, he'd been bought out. But part of Quilliam Foundation is Majid Nawaz and Tommy Robinson came up with this figure of 84%. They came up with this figure not based on data. They basically said this is how unscientific this is. They went, look, this is an example. They went, there's grooming gangs in place X, Y, and Z. Let's look at those specific ones that are well known in the media. Of course, the Muslim grooming gangs was something that was perpetuated in the media because the Zionist controlled media. So they're saying we're looking at the famous cases, and based on that, it's 84%. That's not how you do data. So that just demonstrates what the media is perpetuating. So yeah, the media perpetuated, when they were talking about grooming gangs, 84% at the time, Muslim grooming gangs. But in reality, is that what the data is? No, it's not. Actually, the Home Office report in 2000 debunked that and said this is not the case. The vast majority of grooming is actually done by white people. Then we had many other studies that debunked, and scientific papers that did it. One by Cockburn, I believe it is, who also debunked their study. And so when you look at the data, the only way you can come up with the idea that there's more Muslim gangs is either by Tommy Robinson, or there was a study done in 2011 and 2013. I believe it's called the COCP study. And what they did, once again, was manufacture it. They separated 2 different entities. They said, look, we're separating. We're going to have a type 1 and a type 2. Type 2 is anybody who does grooming of teenagers if they're vulnerable, like if they're in social services or whatever it is. And type 1 is going to be anyone who wants to rape, like anyone who's under the age of 15 or 13. And so you're going to have 2 separate entities. And then they said, on this specific one, so it's like when there's a large number of people, it's 15, 16, 17-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and it's people who are vulnerable. That is disproportionately Pakistani. But actually, this other figure, it's 100% white. We've just taken that out. So, like, it's the fallacy of the way they manipulate the data. So now I can actually say to that, using that study, 100% of white people rape children under the age of 13. But again, even that would be fraudulent on me, and I wouldn't do that, because what they've done is taken that out of the main aspect, and they made it into type 1 and type 2. But type 1 shows that's 100%. Type 2 shows it's mainly Asians. When you put them together and you put the real data, it actually shows it's not disproportionate. So all of the claims that he's made about grooming gangs are fake. But you know what is disproportionate? My last point, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
What is actually disproportionate is per capita is people who are friends with Tommy Robinson, linked to Tommy Robinson, shared the same positions or ideology with Tommy Robinson, or were part of the EDL or a group which is very similar to it. Those are disproportionate in terms of grooming gangs, rape, and pedophilia. I did a thread which showed that 100 people, more than 100 people, were either directly or indirectly connected to Tommy Robinson, partook in grooming and rape. So just think about that. A very small proportion of people who either know Tommy Robinson, are friends with him, are linked to him, are part of the EDL or part of a group which is similar to the EDL, all took part in grooming and sexual violence. That's what's disproportionate. So the disproportionate is that. And the irony is, last point, sorry, I said last point before, but Rupert Law said that, look, this grooming occurred, and therefore there will be people who were aware of it and stayed silent. They should also be punished. I agree. Anyone who was aware of violence should be punished. But should it only be brown people? Should it only be Muslims, or should it be everyone? So if it should be everyone, what are the chances that you've got hundreds of people connected to Tommy Robinson and Tommy Robinson not aware of it? And therefore it means he should also be tried, or he should also be deported. So I think those are like some of the points in terms of grooming and the fallacies related to him.
Yeah. What you sort of, the first point you sort of made about, all sane and reasonable people, condemning grooming of any kind and every kind, regardless of their background or of the perpetrators, that's something that we can all agree upon. And I'm sick of hearing, these far right scammers lying when they say Muslims haven't spoken against it. The grooming gang scandal in the UK was condemned by imams across 500 British mosques in public sermons over a decade ago. The facts are that the perpetrators were non-practicing, and what they did is completely against what Islam teaches. And again, you also touched upon, Islamically, the punishment for grooming crimes is the death penalty in Islam. So this is nothing to do with Islam as a religion. The majority of people involved in the so-called cover-up were non-Muslims. And again, if you look at the stats, like you touched upon in the UK, over 85% of grooming gang perpetrators are white non-Muslims. So you made really good points. And again, it's all about research. I mean, they don't link Epstein to being American or Jewish. They don't link Jimmy Savile to being British or Christian. So why are the perpetrators being linked to Pakistan or Islam, especially when the vast majority of Pakistani and Muslim men don't commit such crimes? The people who are making it a race or religion issue have an agenda. And again, I put this all down to Zionist propaganda designed to dehumanize Muslims. And what do Elon Musk, Tommy Robinson, and all their peers have in common? They're anti-Islam and they're pro-Israel. So why do these guys never speak about the groomers in their own communities? Musk wouldn't dare speak about Epstein or the Israeli cybersecurity government official who solicited a child in the US and got away with it. Where's the uproar about that cover-up? And you touched upon Tommy Robinson. He won't speak about many of his EDL friends who are convicted child predators. We see new cases every day. There was a Southport rioter that forced himself on a 12-year-old girl and gave her an STD, and we don't hear a peep out of Tommy about that. And like you said, there's no way that he won't know about these issues. You've talked a lot about Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk, and what do you think about the role that they play, along with even Andrew Tate, in spreading these narratives on immigration and grooming, as well as trash news channels like Talk TV and GB News?
Yeah, just one last point I forgot to make was 2 points, and then I'll come on to answer your question. One is the data actually shows in 2024, the vast majority of foreign sexual crimes were done by who? 100 were done by Indians, 92 were done by Polish, and I believe 80 something were done by Romanians. Or it might be the other way around, Romania and Poland. So again, 2024 shows, and the data shows, it's not, again, Muslims, and it's not Pakistanis. The second point I want to make is that he also, one of the arguments Tommy Robinson makes is about Sharia law. And he says, 33% of Muslims want Sharia law. But again, this is a fallacy, because it's a lack of understanding of what Sharia law is. Because Sharia law isn't just laws, crime, and punishment, but it has a more holistic nature to it. For example, part of Sharia is how one should pray, how one should fast, how one should give charity. Yes. And so when you ask an average Muslim, do you believe in Sharia? They'll say, yeah, of course. I pray, I fast, I do all these things. Of course I do. So it depends on how you ask the question. If you ask a Muslim, do you want to overthrow the UK government? They will say, and implement Sharia law. they will, vast majority, the overwhelming majority, if not all, will say no. So it's how you phrase the question where you have the manipulation. And if you ask a Jewish person, do you follow Jewish law? They will say yeah, and their figures will be much higher because they're a lot more stricter and practicing in that regard, especially the religious practice. And so again, that's another one of his fallacies. In terms of the role they play in terms of Musk and Robinson, they play a huge role. If you look at what they've done, what has been done has been intentional. It has been to demonize Muslims, and the reason is twofold. The first, obviously, is to remove the redirect conversation away from the Israeli crimes. And as you quite rightly have said, is he's not spoken about Israeli pedophilia. He has spoken about Epstein, but he's not made the link between Epstein and Israeli intelligence. He's not made the link between, and he never even spoke about Tom Alexandrovich, the Israeli cybersecurity guy who you mentioned, or Sigal Shatter, the DA who basically did nothing to him and allowed him to escape, who again is an Israeli, which is a cover-up. That being said, let's bring it back to the point of what's the reason they did it. So first, it's to redirect direct conversation. The second thing is there's three reasons. The second thing is, if you look at Zionist NGOs, the entire modus operandi has been to demonize Muslims. And this is what comes back to the Tommy Robinson thing. And let me just mention it. So Tommy Robinson says, oh, I'm not funded by Israel. This is dumb. Israel sent me some money. And he's like, oh, I work for Rebel Media and Bob Shulman gave them money and that's it. I'm just employed. But that doesn't tell you the full story. And he relies on the fact that people don't know the full story. So Bob Shulman is an American, but he's a Zionist. And his allegiance is to Israel. He has funded a large number of organizations based on two specific things. To promote Zionism. So, for example, he funded a Zionist organization by $2 billion, which is called the Zionist Organization of America. He also funded the IDF, what is the Friends of IDF, which again is Israeli. But then what else does he fund? So it shows the Zionist. So he receives Zionist money because the Israeli government don't pay people. They do it through NGOs, lobby groups, through rich Zionist billionaires. It's the David Horowitz organization, which is sole purpose is anti-Islam bigotry, to hate Muslims. It's the Middle Eastern Forum. So he's funded those, and their job is to do hatred against Muslims, to do anti-Islamic propaganda, as per what we're seeing now. He also funded Rebel News, who employed Tommy Robinson, and it was a special direct fund that Shulman gave for Tommy Robinson. And so when you look at these lobby groups, or you look at Henry Jackson Society, which is Douglas Murray, their job is to propagate hatred against Muslims. So he is funded by Zionists, he is funded by an Israeli asset, and he is funded to cause hatred against Muslims. That's all his job. He's not smart enough to understand more complex ideas. Tommy Robinson hasn't got the IQ. But Elon Musk has that issue, but he has a more larger prevailing issue. Elon Musk is linked to Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance. Peter Thiel is the person who implanted J.D. Vance as the as the vice president of the United States of America. He created J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance was a never Trumper. He then implanted him as a senator. Within 2 years of being a senator, he was then, as a negotiation with Donald Trump, become the vice president. And the aim is that he'll become the president and they have complete control. And right now, they do have the control over the U.S. administration, the Trump administration, through him. Yeah. So what does that mean here? Why am I mentioning that? Because what's happened in the U.S. is, through many of these attacks, and they've basically through Palantir, which is again another Zionist organization, which is through Karp and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, because they're all the PayPal mafia. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are part of the PayPal mafia. They've given a huge amount of contracts in the United States to Palantir for mass surveillance. Guess what? In the UK, what they're doing the exact same thing. They're doing two things. One is they're giving contracts to BlackRock. So Tommy Robinson's right. He was like, oh, they're giving contracts to BlackRock. But what Tommy Robinson isn't smart enough to realize is, who is BlackRock? BlackRock is CEO is Larry Fink, which is a Jewish Zionist. And if you look at, and our prime minister is a Jewish Zionist. And then if you look at Palantir and the UK, I researched this, they've given a huge number of contracts to Palantir. They gave it after the COVID pandemic. They gave it where they have all of our NHS data, all of our personal profiles, all of our personal information. They've given defense contracts to them. They've given mass surveillance to them. What is the reason for it? The reason is, and the aim is this, that they've got all the contracts. What they want to do is cause civil unrest through Tommy Robinson They want to have riots. They want to have destruction of the UK. And then what they want to do is, and then what their aim is, which we disagree with, is someone may get harmed, someone may get killed. And then they'll say to everybody, look, for your protection, this is for your protection. We need to have mass surveillance. We need to have digital ID. We need to have a social credit score. And so what will happen, a social credit system. And what will happen is there'll be mass surveillance controlled by Jewish Zionists where everyone, it doesn't matter if you're left or right, you will be controlled and mass surveilled and spied on by Israeli intelligence. And this isn't some conspiracy theory. They did the exact same thing after September the 11th. They used that to do mass surveillance, both in the United Kingdom and the United States. In the United States, they did the Patriot Act. In the United Kingdom, they did the Terrorism Act. And both of them were used to surveil UK and US citizens. And this is this next step up, is mass surveillance controlled by Jewish Zionists who have an allegiance to Israel, have complete control over the United States and the UK. So that's Elon Musk's actual real agenda behind all of this.
I think Sharia is, personally, I think Sharia law is way better than Zionism, but people have been told to think otherwise. What are your thoughts on someone like Andrew Tate and his role in pushing the far right stuff? You know, given that you've been pro Tate in the past, as was I when he first reverted. What are your thoughts on his views on immigration and grooming and how he's added to all of this?
Yeah, look, at the end, when I looked into the Tate case, obviously, in terms of the allegations at that time, I've not looked at them since. They seemed extremely weak. And so I analyzed them and I said, look, these are weak. They have no basis or whatever it may be. In terms of Andrew Tate, look, you can have a situation where you agree with someone on one thing and disagree with them on other issues.
Of course.
And so this is obviously one issue that as you've seen, I'm completely on the other side of him. I disagree with him on immigration, not immigration. I disagree with him about the claims he's made in terms of the grooming gangs, the claims he's made in terms of immigration, in terms of Muslim immigration. So yeah, I do disagree with him. But yeah, so yeah, that's my point about Andrew Tate. I don't look, Andrew Tate, in terms of in the past, we did have a very good relationship. So I don't like attacking people who have a decent relationship with. But yeah, I do disagree with him on that. And that demonstrates that, look, we are analytical, we're logical. And if you look at myself and Andrew Tate, we've been on the other side of almost issues over the last year and a half. The issue I disagree with him on is obviously him supporting Gaza, him speaking out against the genocide in Gaza. But then I disagree with him on these issues. But in terms of why I think that with Andrew Tate, he's not as important to UK politics as someone like Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk and the kind of impact they have. That's why I focus a lot more on what they've got to say.
Yeah. And I think now racism and Islamophobia have become mainstream, and it amazes me how ignorant and bigoted people can be. I get that it's trendy and people are jumping on the bandwagon to grift and make money, but don't these people have a conscience? That's what I don't understand. Some of the things that hear on X and from clips of these right-wing news channels is just mind-boggling, like GB News, like Talk TV. And what's crazy is these platforms are doing similar viewership as the BBC and ITV. And again, all this is down to the Israeli government and their well-funded PR campaign to shift public perspective around the world in order to justify what they're doing in Palestine. In your opinion, how does this all tie in with the Israeli regime, the Gaza genocide, and the occupation of Palestine?
It ties significantly. Yeah. And so if you look at it, there's a guy called Konstantin Kin. He's a Jewish guy from Russia, an immigrant. And he was in the left, and then he switched position to the right. And people are like, oh my God, it's so amazing. He switched position to the right. He didn't switch positions to the right because he supports the British people. He didn't switch position to the right because he supports the working class. He switched positions solely for one reason, Israel. So what he saw was that the left, largely speaking, spoke out against the genocide in Gaza. And he realized that the left isn't supporting the Israeli regime, and that's the reason he switched. Now, in the United States, they have a very strong movement on the right that speaks out against the genocide in Gaza, is anti-Zionist. In the UK, we don't. The entire right is bought and sold. We don't have anyone on the right who speaks against it. The very few people who did, they were demonized, marginalized, and rejected. So as an example, Nick Griffin actually mentions how the Israelis offered him a buttload of money to say that, look, don't speak about immigration as a holistic thing. speak about Muslims. And he said, look, I haven't got an issue with Muslims. My issue is immigration. So they ensured, and then they separated him and made sure that he didn't have a following and he didn't have support. So anyone on the far right or on the right who has an anti-Israel position in the UK, they don't support them. They don't allow them to have a platform. And if you look at the right in the UK, that's consistent. And a good example of that is in the UK, the right talk about free speech, and yet they don't believe in free speech. Nigel Farage, as an example, Tommy Robinson are people who supported the ban on Palestine action. Now, if they believe in free speech, and the argument is they're a designated terrorist organization, but they only got designated a few weeks ago, and they only got designated because of the Strait of Israel. So what they're basically saying is Keir Starmer desires to designate EDL or UTK, what they call themselves now, the new iteration, as a terrorist organization that's acceptable, and therefore they can't have speech anymore. I thought you believe in free speech. So what it demonstrates, these people are hypocrites. They don't actually believe in free speech, and they don't believe in free ideas because they support censorship when it's not their own group, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas we're consistent. We say, look, well, I'm consistent. I say, look, he should have free speech. They should have free speech. Let's have an avenue of conversation. And actually, I think that when my ideas are confronted with your ideas are extremely weak and you're going to get destroyed. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the important points. So when you look at how it's connected in that way. It's also connected via the NGOs and the Zionist lobby perpetuating and promoting this. And it's also connected through, as you said, social media. Because let's be clear, Israel or the Zionists control the media. Yes. They control the mainstream media. They control social media. And the only two social media points that they didn't control fully was TikTok and Twitter. And so what happened was, and that's how I became big, because they didn't control it. And the vast majority of the world is pro-Palestine. The vast majority of Britain is pro-Palestine. This is the irony of it. So even these far-right people are going against the views of the British people because they are actually against Israel. That being said, so they control the media. They control the government. So you see that through, again, the actions of Keir Starmer. They try and make it look like Keir Starmer is pro-Muslim. How is Keir Starmer pro-Muslim? He has supported the genocide in Gaza. He's been complicit in the genocide in Gaza. He supported the electricity, water being shut off in Gaza. He is a Jewish Zionist. He's confirmed that he's a Jewish Zionist. His wife's Jewish Zionist. He's got family in Israel. And then you're telling me that he supports Muslims. No, he doesn't. He supports the Zionists. And again, the government is controlled by the Zionists. And that it doesn't matter. And by the way, in the UK, and this is the same in the US, every single group is controlled by Zionists. It doesn't matter if it's the right wing or the left wing or the far left or the far right. They control everything. So when they talk about a Muslim takeover, that was always a fallacy. That was always a propaganda. The real takeover has already happened. It's occupation by the foreign government of Israel who control this nation. And if these people were really patriots, which they're not, the main thing about patriotism and nationalism is sovereignty. They don't have sovereignty of their own nation from the foreign state of Israel. And so therefore, why are you talking about patriotism? Why are you talking about nationality? And such is the level of control. As an example, people like Tommy Robinson and all of these people in the far right. You know, when 3 British military personnel, they talk about the military and they talk about how they love the military. They talk about how they support the military. Yet when there was 3 British military personnel, and what happened is they were retired. And what happens with a lot of military personnel is when they retire, they become private contractors. And so they were a private contractor for Solace Global. And what happens is them private contracts are then given to various people, whoever it may be. That private contract was given to the World Kitchen, what's it called? The World Kitchen, or whatever it's called. And what happened was that contract was given to them. These are soldiers who Tommy Robinson claims he supports, the far right claim they support. When they got killed by Israel, when Israel directly targeted and killed them, that was the time to show that do you support your country, do you support your own soldiers, or do you support Israel? So the vast majority of them stayed quiet. But Tommy Robinson went one step further. He insulted them. He essentially said they deserved it and they're cooks. So he insulted them. So this demonstrates the occupation of the United Kingdom. It is fully occupied by Israel, and Tommy Robinson is fully occupied. And last point to prove that he's fully occupied is Tommy Robinson admits that they had a meeting where they discussed how they're going to create the UTK and how they're going to make sure they get everyone on board. You know who they brought into that meeting? It was Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, who is an Israeli, he's employed by the Daily Wire, which is a front for the Israeli for Israel and Israeli intelligence. And so he is merely a shill for them. And so he was sent, and he's someone who's attacked Christianity. He's attacked people who say Christ is king. So again, he's a full shill for the Israeli government. And he was brought in. So it shows that the whole organization is an organization that is run by Israel. And the entire movement is a globalist movement. And that's why the event, he's invited people from throughout the world. So how is it that you're saying you're fighting globalism and then your entire event is based on globalism? So those are the multifaceted areas how Israel is connected to the UK, and they fully control our government, and they have complete control over the media, the NGO groups, and through blackmail operations as well, through, as you mentioned, things like Jeffrey Epstein and various other things.
Yeah. I do agree with you, and I want to come back to this point and just in a second. We've just got a super chat from Kabat. Sulaiman, can you answer this question directly? Are you against any type of Dawah in Western countries? I'm not going to name names, but I have the impression you are anti-Dawah in the West and do openly say it's positive. And do you openly say it's positive?
So look, I disagree with in terms, so I agree with giving Dawah. If you've met my mom, like that's all she does 24/7, right? Someone comes to the house and she'll give them a Quran. But basically doing things in a respectful manner. And so what I mean by that is like when you basically relay Islam in a respectful manner, that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. What I kind of disagree with a little bit is this kind of debate culture. What happens where it is, and I feel like some of it has demonized Christians, where now if I look at the US, a large part of the people who spoke out against the genocide in Gaza and ensured it never became a Muslim issue was the Christians in the West. So I think that there's a wise way of doing it. There's a wise way of having conversation. It's not Christianity believe in evangelizing as well. So this isn't something that is negative. Every religion, except for Judaism, who doesn't believe in it because they believe in it being a genetic thing, and then they'll just select people. But then I think that is more of a based on supremacy. So I don't believe Islam's a supremacist religion. Islam is a worldwide religion. It accepts people of all races, religions, creed, and cultures. So I believe in telling people about or speaking about the positivity of Islam, but I don't believe in this kind of like debate culture. I used to agree with it in the past, but I've just grown up. And even within Islam, I don't believe in a sectarian debate culture anymore. In the past, yes, I used to call out even myself. Because I was younger, I was a bit more flamboyant. I was like, oh, look, your sect says this and so on and so forth. And then you grow up. And so I just don't agree with debating in that regard. There's a bigger issue for me. The bigger issue is Zionism, and just debating Islam and Christianity, I just think just doesn't benefit. And so focus is Zionism. I think if everyone because they're doing the biggest harm. You're seeing the harm, the murder they're doing in the Middle East. You're seeing the murder that they're doing in the Palestinians. And they caught all this, everything we're speaking about now in terms of the harms in the UK, they're doing it. So like debating Christianity in terms of theology, I think just isn't something that is prudent, and I think that is the bigger prudent thing. So that's my view on it.
I agree with you. It's not the main issue right now, and something that even us debating amongst each other about things like sex and stuff like that isn't important. We should be uniting against the Gaza genocide, against Israel. And you made some really good points earlier when you're talking about how it ties in with the Israeli regime. And I'm glad that you have also written a book about October 7, 2023, the propaganda date that is used by the Israeli regime to kickstart this global deception to justify them taking over Gaza and the West Bank. There's evidence out there about how Netanyahu was in on October 7th, and also about how the IDF killed many of their own citizens, along with numerous debunked claims about what supposedly took place on that day. Given your extensive research skills, which you've shown us today, I'm really looking forward to reading your book when it comes out, inshallah. Can you briefly give some more details about the content of the book and when the release date is?
Yeah, look, the aim is for it to be released on October the 7th. So I'm working fast as I can to get it done, but I get easily distracted. That's my problem, because I started I'm started researching the grooming gangs, because I'm on your podcast and I'm on like quite a few different ones. Even James English, I give him credit. He's from the far right. He says he's not right or left, but look, he's right wing. He's gonna have me on. So there's gonna be a few podcasts that I'm gonna go on to speak about this, because I feel like it's a very important issue. So I've got a bit distracted, but my aim is to finish it for October the 7th. And it's extremely important, because I really believe that they're lying about this issue right now. And I'll speak about some aspects of it, and you've already mentioned some already. They're lying about this issue right now. So imagine what they're going to do 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years time. It'll be completely censored, and the information will be totally different to the reality of the situation. And so that's why I thought it's important to have an academic book written that dispels all of the claims in real time right now. And therefore, we've got that as a reference point 20, 30, 40 years' time when people try and make these claims. And look, in terms of October the 7th, yeah, I was instrumental in debunking these claims. I mean, I wasn't the only one. There was the Grey Zone and various other people who did it. There was the Electronic Intifada and various other people who also debunked them. But some of the lies they told were shocking, such as the 40 beheaded babies, such as, for example, Hamas coming there to try and kill people. They lied about the Hamas Charter. I went through the charter and explained that actually the Hamas Charter doesn't talk about that. The Hamas Charter talks about all man being equal, saying that everyone if Hamas has leadership over the area, whether you're Muslim, Christian, or Jew, you will have equal rights under the leadership of Palestine. It doesn't matter about your race, religion, or creed. Everyone have equal rights. They talked about how they're going to protect Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people. So the charter says something else, and the claim says something else. And so I've wrote about that in the book. Although I've done a big podcast with on Fresh and Fit, it was like 5.5 hours long, where we debunked a lot of the lies about October the 7th. But that was some of the lies. As you said, Israel killed the vast majority of their own people on October the 7th. You're also right that they deployed the Hannibal Directive, which was to kill their own people. We also know that they had the opportunity to have all of their hostages released on October the 9th and October the 10th, and they rejected it. We also know, as you said, the lies about the mass rape. That was completely fake. Not only was there no mass rape, there wasn't even evidence of one rape on October the 7th. They also lied about hostages being abused sexually. That didn't happen. The two witnesses have debunked their claims as well in the book. They basically initially never ever said that, and then they were basically manufactured to say that later, people such as Ahmed Sassouna and various others. So the entire thing about October the 7th was created. And the reason it was created was this: to give this psychology that Muslims, or in this case Palestinians who are also Muslims, are barbaric, that they're inhumane, and therefore they're an antithesis to civil society. And so when you paint that picture, then they were all on social media saying, like people like Laura Loomer, who says turn Gaza into a parking lot, to glass Gaza, to destroy Gaza. So they said all of these things to destroy Gaza because they wanted to manufacture this consent. And they've continuously been trying to do that because the aim is to dehumanize and demonize them, and then to basically have manufacture consent to destroy it. Now, fortunately, we were able to debunk a lot of the claims. And now over these last 2 years, I would say a huge number of people have woken up, both on the left and the right. Even in the US, the far right, people like Candace Owens, someone I vehemently disagreed with, someone who I vehemently disliked because of her attacks on Islam when she was employed by the Israeli-controlled Daily Wire. But she's apologized, and she says that, look, this was based on me not having the correct understanding of Islam and not really understanding the realities of the information. And so all of these people who are speaking out, maybe they don't speak out in the same manner that we do, because I'm a bit more direct. I'm a bit more like, I don't really care. Like, I'll just speak the truth even if people hate me. But that being said, like anything anyone does, we appreciate, we evaluate. The main goal is fighting against Zionism.
Yes, I agree with you. And, you know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you success and reward you for all the good work that you do for the Palestinians and the Ummah in general. Like I said, I'm really interested in reading the book when it comes out. And I'm so glad that a lot of the claims from October 7th have been debunked, and a lot of people are waking up to it. There are still some people that are ignorant to it and are not sure about what is right and what is wrong. So hopefully this book will help clarify a lot of things for a lot of people. Coming back to the UK, from the toxic culture we're currently experiencing here in the UK and in the West in general, it doesn't look like things are going to calm down anytime soon. We're seeing a lot happening right now in England. Hopefully no far-right political parties come into power. We do have people like Jeremy Corbyn and Sarah Sultana forming a party to offer an alternative to the far-right ones and to the two major parties who are also run by Israeli lobbyists. And even though this party is quite liberal, is better than the alternative. So I guess we'll wait and see. But on an individual level, Muslims and minorities need to keep themselves safe and on alert. So how do you think Muslims and minorities, and even non-Muslims and non-minority communities that are sympathetic to us, deal with this current prejudicial culture going forward?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. In terms of the parties, you're quite right. And with reform, you have got Advanced UK that's now possibly going to split their vote, which is run by Ben Habib, who is a Pakistani immigrant. He was actually born in Pakistan. So just you're fourth generation, I'm third generation. He just came off the boat. So his idea of being anti-immigration is just ridiculous when he's literally an immigrant. His father's a Muslim and he's a self-proclaimed atheist. Therefore, he doesn't even espouse Christian values. So that being said, they're going to likely split the vote. You've got people like Tommy Robinson who's supporting him. You've got Elon Musk who are supporting him. Farage is getting less support for that reason. On the left, you're right. You've got your party. And look, ordinarily, I would support them. And I think I will probably end up supporting them. But they need to do a lot more better. I think Corbyn was asked recently about whether he was an anti-Zionist and he was just not responding to it. I think that's a problem. Like, you shouldn't, okay, you were afraid 4 or 5 years ago where you start sacking people based on false claims of anti-Semitism. They made sure he wasn't prime minister based on false claims of anti-Semitism. You need to have a backbone. You need to be stronger. You can't let them bully you into submission. And so that's my biggest concern in terms of Jeremy Corbyn and your party. But that being said, you're right. They are the best of all of the alternatives. So therefore, we need to just make sure that we continue to basically relay these ideas and hope that they do better in terms of those positions. And obviously, one of the biggest benefits is that they're not controlled by the Zionists or the Zionist lobby, which is the major issue on those parties. What should Muslims do? I think Muslims, what should do is, first of all, two things. The first thing is, obviously, I think we should act in the most best manner possible. I think the best manner of demonstrating that we're Muslims or the Muslim ethics and attitude is through our conduct and through our ethics. And I think if people were to do that, you'd have a lot more of a positive view of Muslims. That being said, that solely doesn't work, because you could be the best Muslim ever and these people will lie about you. As you've seen, they will do propaganda against you and they will try and demonize you. And so the second thing that Muslims should do is try and educate people on this. This is, someone mentioned about Dawah. One of the disagreements I had is, and I did speak to a couple of the brothers privately, and look, they took the advice on board, and therefore, obviously, I'm not going to mention it. But one of the things I said is, look, you're on the Dawah scene, and you're like, oh yeah, bro, I'm going to take over. We're going to take over. And I'm like, look, that's just doesn't work, because it's not the truth. In reality, we're not taking over. In reality, Muslims aren't the biggest numbers. We're not increasing in terms of immigration and birth rate, as I've demonstrated. So when you're saying that, first of all, it's not true. And second of all it does is causes hatred towards Muslims when the reality isn't the case. Speak truthfully, not truthfully, because I don't think they're doing it to lie, but speak the reality of the situation in terms of like these things that I've mentioned. And so it's educating people on these things, making people aware of these things so that people understand that a lot of the things they say are not fallacious. And the last thing I would say is to just become politically a lot more aware, and also just keep their families safe. Unfortunately, UK is becoming extremely worse. It is becoming very difficult to live here. You saw, for example, there's two girls from Scotland, the 12-year-old. Now, when I read the story, both people's story didn't make sense. And I said this. So I wasn't on the side of the girl and I wasn't on the side of the Bulgarian Christians who basically attacked the girl allegedly, and the girl said they attacked them. Again, they weren't Muslim. Let's be clear on that. Yes. But that being said, what I said was they were propagating and promoting her in terms of her holding an axe and holding a knife. In the UK, knife crime is significant. Mm-hmm. And so what you're doing is promoting young people under 16 to hold knives. And by the way, the people who hold knives won't just be white people. It'll be white people, it'll be black people, it'll be brown people, it'll be everyone. Because you see somebody else holding a knife, you're going to have a knife. And what that'll result in is escalation of knife crimes and a lot of stabbings. And so what these people are promoting is civil unrest, violence, and uncivil society. So it is a major cause for concern. And so therefore, the best thing we can do is call this out and make sure that our people and everyone in the UK is protected.
Yeah, inshallah. And I don't want to tar all non-Muslims with the same brush as the far right, because from my experience, the majority of people in the UK are nice and tolerant in their views. And I think we need to build good relationships with them. And for those that are being brainwashed by the propaganda, I think like you said, our good conduct as Muslims and law-abiding citizens is very key in overcoming the negative stereotypes and the lies. But if someone does find themselves in danger, please call the police and protect yourself through the authorities. We have seen a lot, like you said, a lot of clips out there where that has been happening. I hear all this talk about assimilating to British culture. Again, you touched upon this earlier on. I think integrating and living peacefully are definitely what all people should do, no matter where they live. And there's no need to assimilate. People who demand that are just being ignorant. We can all live peacefully whilst respecting each other's similarities and differences, and at the same time keeping our racial and religious identities intact.
But the question about assimilation is this. So I give you an example of assimilation that's occurred, and it's actually negative, right? Because well, you could see it as negative. They view it as negative, right? Because as I gave example of how our parents suffered racist abuse, they would just take it. Now people act exactly like the working class white people, which is that they basically have assimilated. But that being said, when one asks for assimilation, what does one mean? What do you want people to assimilate to? Because you yourself do not even know what you believe in. When you've got someone like Tommy Robinson who says, I believe in Christianity, but then and he only said that because he came on the grift, because a lot of people are becoming Christian now, in terms of not becoming Christian in terms of conversion, but like a lot of people who left Christianity are now thinking, okay, maybe I should be a bit more religious. So he's understood that's a grift. But what does he mean when he's saying he believes in liberalism and LGBTQ and feminism, and then on the other hand, he believes in Christianity? Those are antitheses, right? They don't work. So what do you want us to assimilate to? Because assimilation in the 70s or 80s, or even 60s, when our grandparents or great-grandparents came to this country, was assimilating to Christian values, Christian moral framework, which is very similar to Islam in terms of not believing in certain liberal ideas, believing in the family structure, believing in morals and ethics, and so on and so forth. So they came to assimilate. But what does assimilation mean now? Assimilation 5 years ago meant assimilating to liberal ideals, assimilating to LGBTQ, hedonism, liberalism, feminism. All of these things are antithesis to Islam, but also to Christianity. And so does that mean Christians were no longer assimilating? And now there's a upward turn towards Christianity. What do you want us to assimilate to now? Is it Christianity? So this whole idea of assimilation, if you were to ask them, they don't know. They will have contradictory points. They will say the X and then they'll say Y, depending on who they speak to, or even in one conversation. So first of all, you need to understand or make the claim or understand or make a direct point in terms of what do you want people to assimilate to, because if their own assimilation doesn't work or their own points of assimilation don't work. So I think that's an extremely important point, because they don't have a framework of what British values are. When they say British values, what do they mean? As I mentioned, British values so many years ago was Christian values. Now, when you look at the Ofsted, when they go to school and they try and work out, is someone following British values? For them, it's homosexuality, LGBTQ, transgender rights in schools, feminism, and liberalism. So that's what British values are. So what are British values and what do you want to assimilate to? They make no sense whatsoever.
And it, like you said, it contradicts Islam, and it's very important to understand what it is that you're assimilating to, like you've said, and making sure that your main priority is Islam, and that's what you're following. I'm really happy that we've done this today, brother. You made some great points, and we had a great discussion about many things that are really important, and inshallah, as educated people, and really showing what is really going on in the world just now. Thank you so much for your time. Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.